Okay, so next, as promised, we'll turn to science. And I would like to call Peter Meyer here and introduce him. He's going to be the moderator for the science talk. Peter is the managing director of the Austrian Research Center for Forests, and he will introduce you the panelists for the next session. You can go there.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's very nice to see such a full room, and we will see that it's really so hot up here, as our previous speakers just said. So it's an honor for me to be the moderator for this session, and I would like to ask my colleagues to please join me here on stage. It's Eliane Ubali-Joro, Hans-Joachim Schellenhuber, John, and Daniela Kleinschmidt. Can I please ask you to join me here at the podium? Ladies and gentlemen, while our colleagues come up here to the stage, let me start with a little proverb that you might have heard before. Facts are facts, but perception is reality. And I think that's something that we experience as researchers, as policymakers, as citizens of our countries, that sometimes we believe, well, there are the facts, but why are they not taken up or considered as much as they should? And I think especially in research and for scientists, sometimes that's a sort of frustration also, that you feel, well, we know all the facts and we have all the facts, but the implementation of these facts are not directly happening. And I think this is now a chance for us here at this very high-level panel here to provide this scientific evidence and the scientific facts to a policy group and to a policy format. And I think that's what we will do in the next half hour or so, to just brainstorm a little bit. What do we know about bioeconomy? What does research and science tell us? And this is something we're really very much looking forward to. Our panelists will also have two or three slides to introduce themselves and also to introduce a little bit the organizations that are working for. And we will start with Eliane Ubali-Joro. Eliane has a PhD and is the CEO of CIFOR, but also the Director General of ICRAF, and you're also a professor at McGill University and Hawaii University, so many things to do. So we are very grateful that you're here in Vienna with us. And please, Eliane, may I ask you to introduce CIFOR and also
Yes. So it's
yourself.
a real pleasure to be here with all of you today. Forest bioeconomies are just really dear to my heart for many reasons. I was born in Rwanda and spent the 35 years in Canada before moving back to Africa, where I've been based in Nairobi for the last 3 years as CEO of CIFOR ICRAF, and also as the first African woman to lead a CGI research center in the over 50-year history of the CGI Research Institutes. So what is really interesting around that is, what we do in terms of CIFOR ICRAF is that we have been working now since 1978 on the ICRAF side and 1993 on the CIFOR side at the interface of forests and agroforestry. And our focus has been looking at biodiversity, food security, and climate change and resilience, and how these are so critical to livelihoods. So for all these decades, what we see is how all of these really require inclusive value chains and local leadership that to be central to any work that really allows trees to thrive in the way we need them to for humanity and for nature. So through this work, we have contributed to the restoration of over 1 million hectares of land, protected more than 135 million hectares, and demonstrated how trees can be turned into global challenges, but really into lasting opportunities where we have the solutions to ensure that humanity lives within planetary boundaries. And so the work we do, if we go to the next slide, really shows that we have a global reach that crosses Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And over the decades of our work, we have had $2 billion worth of research invested in 192 funding partners with more than 2,200 projects in over 92 countries. And so our work really has been, how do we take all of this amazing power that has built through millennia in nature to really be able to support the work that humanity needs for us to continue to thrive in ways that humanity thrives and nature thrives together. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Eliane. Maybe there is a follow-up question. I mean, there's impressive numbers that you're demonstrating here for CIFOR and ICRAF, but on the field of bioeconomy, is there your take or CIFOR's intelligence on that topic, on what is the potential of that concept and in the work of CIFOR?
So in terms of the work we do, in terms of the bioeconomies, what we see is that forest-based bioeconomies can drive prosperity that strengthen forests rather than drawing them down. This requires building the systems that let sustainable production, innovation, and investment scale across entire landscapes. And this needs to build on science and indigenous ways of knowing. We see 5 levers, particularly catalytic, and they align closely with where we are focusing our work. First, we want forest-positive value chains, particularly in high-risk commodity landscapes. Many commodities are already driving land use change. The strategic move is to redesign supply chains so deforestation-free, restoration-linked production becomes the default. This includes piloting agroforestry-based cocoa and coffee, smallholder-owned rubber systems, and production on degraded land for wood and bioenergy. In parallel, we work with smallholders, cooperatives, and buyers to co-design traceability and sourcing approaches that small producers can participate in. The leverage point is preemptive value chain redesign that shifts incentives across entire value chains. So just one example that I'd like to give. So in the Democratic Republic of Congo, our research on small-scale chainsaw milling estimates that more than 1 million cubic meters of chainsaw timber are produced annually, with about 85% serving domestic demand. In roundwood equivalent, this was estimated at 3.4 million cubic meters per year, roughly 13 times higher than formal wood production. That scale tells us that this is not marginal activity. It is a core part of how wood moves and how livelihoods are made in fragile states. The problem is that the market is often excluded from the pathways that create trust and value. Many smallholder operators harvest high-quality species, but without legal recognition, workable documentation, and processing and drying capacity, they are pushed into low value chains and regulatory gray zones, illegality that distorts prices and undermines confidence, even when the wood itself is good. So responsible actors lose out, and formalization stops making sense. The opportunity to acknowledge the market that already exists and upgrade it, simplify legality for smallhold producers, and invest in basic processing and quality and support and aggregation. So documentation and traceability become feasible while compliant pathways pay, pressure falls, and responsibility can scale. We also see that second, non-timber and circular bioeconomy niche are needed to ensure that non-timber forest products, bioenergy from residues, and circular cascades offer large underused potential for income and resilience without increasing pressure on primary forests. The leverage point is expanding the bioeconomy basket. Third, we see policy and standards alignment in producer countries. Many policies still reward conversion more than restoration-linked production. This is where research institutions can be particularly influential, working with ministries and agencies that to align national bioeconomy and land use plans with forest-positive criteria, make sustainability part of the national development and climate strategy. Fourth, we see that smallholder and community-led bioeconomy platforms can be key, where smallholders and indigenous communities manage vast forests and agroforestry landscapes. Yet, we need to go again from having them excluded to having them included into transparent marketplaces that really are being seen in the formal markets. We also see knowledge metrics and open evidence as key. We know markets and finance follow what can be demonstrated credibly. Many countries and producers still lack low-cost ways to show forest condition, sustainability performance, and livelihood outcomes. At C4 Aircraft, we help by building open, interoperable evidence systems that combine remote sensing, field-based validation, and participatory monitoring. I could go on and just want to state also, we are strengthening our ability to deliver on these levers through 2 new EU-funded initiatives launched in December 2025. Thrivelands, a 20 million euro program, is looking at how are we looking forest bioeconomies, particularly in the dry lands of this world. And it includes how we can see agroforestry restoration that supports food security, livelihoods, and climate stability, backed by targeted finance and data-driven decision-making. And with GeneLink, what we're doing is looking at how to strengthen fair access to genetic resources and build global self-capacity for transparent, traceable, bio-based innovations. And in this way, support investment-ready policies and benefit sharing that recognizes indigenous knowledge and community stewardship, while at the same time looking at the valuable forest-based value chains that can help us build strong local bioeconomies and can be key to local thriving and global exchange that are really scaling green economies worldwide.
Elena, thanks very much, and thank you also for linking to the business panel that we just had before, in essence, and also highlighting the important social sphere that is with the livelihoods that is obviously connected with the bioeconomy concept, and that demonstrates how broad the whole concept really is, and also the contribution that you are making. Thanks very much. Let me continue with John Schellenhuber. John, you have an impressive career. You are now the director of IIASA, the International Institute of Applied Systems Analysis here close to Vienna, but you're also a pioneer in climate science. You have co-founded the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research, and you've also founded the Bauhaus Earth. So many things that are very much linked to bioeconomy. So maybe you will introduce a little bit what IIASA does, but also what your field of interest and the link to bioeconomy, and as we just have heard from Iliane, also the potential that you see in the bioeconomy. John.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Peter. First of all, it's a great pleasure to sit between these 2 eminent ladies here. I'd like to humbly address an issue which is, I think, the greatest restoration project in human history. And I'll try to use 2 slides for showing you this. So bear with me, I'll go through this step by step actually. So what you see here is on the horizontal axis, it's just the timeline between 1900 and 2200. And on the vertical axis, you see global mean temperature change, that is global warming above pre-industrial level. So the most important agreement done in this space is the Paris Agreement. These are the 2 lines which we must not transgress. Unfortunately, we have transgressed 1.5 more or less already. So what is the development on global warming so far? Well, this is this line here. So you see in 2024, we were beyond 1.5 degrees, and there's no chance to hold that line actually. But even worse, what is the development given all climate policies of the world so far, as they have been discussed, for example, at COP30 in Brazil. I'm actually setting out for Brazil this afternoon, so I will talk to the former president of COP30 and so on. Okay, what is the future of climate? If we implement all climate policy so far being submitted, well, it will look like this. This is political business as usual. We will go far beyond 2 degrees, and we will even enter, in my view, the deadly zone beyond 3 degrees. Now, this is not a future we can manage, definitely not. And we've done lots of impact research. I can tell you this is not a viable path for humanity. So what is the alternative? Well, the alternative is this here. We call it overshoot management. So we try to keep the overshoot beyond 2 degrees as flat and short as possible. But this will be a tremendous effort, and it will take about 200 years. That is what we find from our models. But it comes in 2 parts. So this drama comes in 2 parts. First, in order to keep the curve flat at least, say at 2.5 degrees, you have to reduce emissions to 0 more or less. But this is not doing the entire job. It will just keep the global warming at the level, say 2.5 for centuries. In order to really bend the curve back, you have to do something else. And that is what we call negative emissions. It's extracting net carbon from the atmosphere. And the only scalable solution is sustainable forestry combined with timber-based construction. It's the only scalable. There are crazy geoengineering ideas about that. The only solution is combining forestry and construction. No? So I will go to this in my next slide. And this is the systems analysis. It's a very busy slide. You don't need to understand it now. We have done publications of that in the most distinguished journals like Nature, for example. But what it says in the end, on the left, all the fossil fuels we are burning are adding CO2 to the atmosphere. Now, CO2 is very good for plants, of course, because it's enhancing photosynthesis. So through sustainable forestry, we draw down the carbon. As Christoph Kulterer, for example, said, we replace the harvested trees by young trees, of course. So we try to close a loop here. On the construction side, we use bio-based materials. It's timber, it's bamboo, very important in China, for example, can be hemp, anything. And you try to do a circular built environment as well. So once you have a timber piece, you don't burn it, you use it again after 100 years or so. No? Why not? We can build, as tradition has shown us, and Yuoku talked about this famous building in Japan, more than 1,000 years old. I was born in a timber house built in the 16th century, actually, in Bavaria. That was my home, actually, where I was raised. So these 2 subcircles together constitute what we call the forestry construction pump that will pump out CO2 from the atmosphere over 5-6 cycles. We published it all. It can really work. It has many co-benefits. So this is the value proposition. This is the manual for restoring the world's climate. It's the biggest business case in history, and we should all be part of that. Now, finally, what has my current institution? Oh, by the way, it simply means add 500 billion trees on degraded land, 500 billion, and build about 2 billion homes from harvested biomass. This is the scope of the challenge. Now, finally, what has YASA and FAO to do with it? On the suggestion of Ewald Ramesteiner. Ewald, are you here somewhere? Here he is. He's the mastermind behind this project. So we did a forest sector outlook study for 2030 and 2050. And I just would highlight, this will be published, of course, in due course and so on, but there are 3 major elements, and when I'm done, it is, yes, we need plantations on degraded land, in particular, we have 1 billion hectares of degraded land on this planet. It can be used, it can be reforested. Under climate change, definitely, when we need full circularity, it goes without saying. And finally, we have to have an eye on, destruction of primary, secondary forest patches. in particular in the global south, unfortunately, that needs to be stopped. But the three principles together are actually the way to save the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, and also illustrating already an example of how science and policy works together with FAO. I think this is exactly what I meant at the beginning. How do we bring all our bright ideas and knowledge also to the implementation? Finally, but certainly last but not least, somebody who works on the science policy interface for many years. As a professor in Freiburg for forest and environmental policy, but she's also the president of UFRO, the International Union of Forest Research Organizations. Daniela Kleinschmidt, as a co-host of this event, what is your take on this topic of bioeconomy, the potential, the risks? So we are very curious to hear from you, Daniela.
Thanks a lot, Peter. Thanks a lot, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of UFRO, thanks for already introducing that. With more than 630 member organizations and more than 15,000 scientists we are presenting, I would very much like to convene that we are proud to be a co-convener of this global summit, because I think that it is a very timely and a forward-looking event. We are honored that numerous of IOFRO members and scientists and the headquarter has supported the process building up for this event, and I'd like to mention in particular Ivana Sivonovic, who has done some of the policy briefs in the background, so you will see some of the IOFRO work as well in the background of this event. And all of this in a moment in time, and I have to excuse myself, but I have to say that as well here, in a moment of time where evidence-based decision-making based on scientific findings are not always valued. So this is why we really want to thank the co-chairs of this summit, and in particular the Austrian Ministry, to take science very serious, and you can see that in particular in this panel. So thanks a lot for this, allowing science to speak and have science policy interfaces as well in the future. So we were asked to say something about the potential and leverage points to advance a forest-based bioeconomy. And as you all heard already today, the bioeconomy is a rather broad concept, which characteristic is, where the characteristic is as well its charm, that it is that broad, and that we can see different things in it and interpret different things in it. We can concentrate on innovations, new technologies, the use of bio-based resources, but as well on many social factors, and we heard that earlier this morning, and like knowledge building. It encompasses non-wood forest products, and many of those have been mentioned in the former panel with the private sector, but it can include as well new innovative products. And I just, not to downgrade all the other options, I'm focusing a little bit on wood construction, so I'm going in the same way as you did, so we are confirming ourselves here. What I would like to show you is the potential for transformation. And if we look into the potential, the ecological potential, then we see into the wood construction, 34% of all the energy consumption globally is going into the construction sector. They are producing 37% of all the global CO2 emissions comes from the building sectors. 50% of the worldwide garbage comes as well from the construction sector, and 50% of the global resource used is as well for the building sector. That is already, or can show us already, that there's a huge potential if we think about the construction sector and if we change things. And I have used here a source from UNEP and Yale from 2003, where you can see no numbers, so it's not really, you can't see the numbers on the y-axis, but you can see as well what is considered as a potential is that there is a huge amount of timber coming, so bio-based resources that should come into the future. But it's not only the timber itself, but it's well the resource. As John just pointed out, I think, and that has to be thought through right from the beginning, because you can't just build a building and then you can reconstruct it and reuse, but you have to think of it right from the beginning on how you can make use of it as well in the future. But as well, there is many other potentials, so it's not only the ecological potential, but as well there is this recycling potential. 20% reduced roundwood demand until 2050 is one of the research results. In Germany, we said that it is 10% increase of recovered wood and 52% from the whole construction sector. As it is as well about to identify leverage points, and there are so many leverage points. And if you look into the policy briefs that are based on or are provided for you as a basis for this summit, I would like to strengthen 3 different groups of ways how we could come to the next stage, of how we can really come to the implementation. And one part is knowledge and communication and coordination. The other one is incentivizing the reuse of forest-based products in construction. And last but not least is as well adapting norms and standards. I might not go through all of those because many of those have been already mentioned earlier. But of course, what is to my heart is that we need to invest in knowledge about forest bioeconomy. We need to foster global research exchange as well, and collaboration, because I think that is relevant for a forest bioeconomy as well in the future. And maybe just to close here, 10 years ago in Vienna, I've given a presentation, and the title of that presentation was Bioeconomy from Highway to Hell or to Stairways to Heaven. And if I think about it now, 10 years later, I would rather think that if it is done in cooperation, if it is respected that we understand bioeconomy in different ways and that we include as well the different ways how we understand it, then it has not only a great potential, but it offers a great essential part to contribute to respond to global challenges we are heading off. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Daniela. I mean, all of you have provided good examples how it can be done and what is needed. So we as researchers, and you are the combined intellectual capacity of all the global networks of research. So it's really very nice to see you all here on stage. But now we live in a real world, and you have already hinted to that, that there is doubt about the evidence that research provides, and that it's not always followed in policy making. But what do you see, what are the main risks or obstacles that we are facing when we now try to promote bioeconomy? We live in a world of different interests, of different also economic realities. So what do we need to consider? What are the obstacles? What is your take on that? Eliane, maybe?
So one of the things that's really key that I think we really need to think about is how are we making sure that we're ensuring that the most marginalized participate. And so this is where a key opportunity is jurisdictional and landscape level frameworks that really allow smallholder farmers and SMEs to really plug into rather than relying on box ticking compliance that is often too expensive for them. The leverage point is upstream policy shaping that makes the right practices easier to adopt and finance. We also need to look at, the leverage point of institutional innovation at landscape level. So social sustainability becomes investable and scalable. So in 2007, I held a Bioeconomy for Africa workshop where I was looking at how do you actually build innovation ecosystems that work. And so this is where how you bring scientists, policymakers, technology transfer experts, and private sector together to really look at how do we ensure there are no gaps, particularly in the global south, so that everybody gets included is a key area that we really need to do to really ensure that we're looking at systems-wide approach on how we're moving forward. So making sure we're leaving nobody behind ensures that the most vulnerable that are also the stewards of forests are included in how we're doing forest bioeconomy in the most inclusive, positive way for people and planet.
You said 2007, that was when you had, so I mean now it's almost 20 years past that conference. Would you say that your plan has worked?
It's very interesting to me because when I was looking at it back in 2007, I have a background as a molecular geneticist. So I'd worked in, innovation ecosystems where a lot of money comes in. And I was based in Canada. And so when I was looking at innovation ecosystems in Africa at the time, what I realized is that they needed to be designed for virtuous cycles that really complete themselves. And so I guess the progress for me has been moving from Canada to Africa and really looking at establishing those partnerships. So whether it's how we're working with African countries and looking at the integration of solar organic carbon in their nationally determined targets, so working at that policy level, because we know 65% of soils in Africa are degraded. So everything we do to reestablish soil health helps us make our landscapes thrive for agriculture and reduces pressures on the forest. So for me, having moved from looking at it externally, off the continent, in the continent, and really talking to the policymakers, talking to the bankers who are looking at, they want to invest green, but they don't have the technical expertise. So one of the excitements for me is working with local banks and saying, how can we use our science to help you leverage your financial tools? And earlier we had Emmanuel de Merode speaking, and so for me it's very exciting the work we're doing in DRC in terms of partnering with Virunga. They bringing their conservation experience and the amazing innovation they brought into financing, green power. And how do we work together to ensure that those livelihoods along the Virunga, Kisangani, Kinshasa corridor have regenerative agriculture that has trees at the center, feeding one of the largest growing capitals in the world?
Excellent. So you convinced me that was a successful model, so thanks very much.
Yes, but we need to keep scaling so that 1 to 1.5 billion hectares are all restored. So we still have a lot of work, and hopefully we'll do it, and by 2030, ideally.
Yes. No, if we would not have a lot of work ahead, so we would be useless. So anyway, so it's good that we...
Okay,
John.
Just follow up. First, I would also like to say we have a mutual friend, Emmanuel de Merode. We tried to bring him here, actually. He said he cannot do it because the situation is very unstable in the Virunga region, but he gave a wonderful keynote, of course, and he's one of the heroes of our time, I really think. Second, directly the answer to your question, it's very simple. It's the policy, stupid, you could say. It's really true, because part of it is here on this slide, in particular, adapt norms and standards. We could talk endlessly about it. But let me say two things about it. One is, first of all, we have done a study with Bauhaus Earth, which we will hopefully publish soon in Nature Cities, in the journal, which was looking at more than 3,000 cities in the world and the possibilities for using bio-based material for construction, either on existing buildings, restoration or new ones. And we found what I would call the opportunity readiness paradox. So we found that in those places where you have the highest potential for using timber, bamboo, in DRC, for example, in Latin America, the readiness was the lowest, and vice versa. It's almost an inverse relationship. It's mind-boggling, really. And it seems that the push factors are lacking precisely where all the pull factors would be there, and vice versa. So this means it's changing regulations, of course, creating the right markets, of course, with the right conditions, creating certificate systems and so on. There's a plethora, actually, of possibilities, but this gap has to be closed, definitely. And I give you a last anecdote. I traveled to Buenos Aires, in Argentina, Uruguay, just before Christmas, and we talked about timber construction. And we have fantastic resources there in the provinces, Misiones. We grow fantastic timber. we just sell it to China, for example, for paper production, instead of using. Why? Because in Buenos Aires, you are not allowed to build a single house from timber. It's forbidden by law, actually. And if we change just a few things, you turn a few knobs, you will have an explosion of use of timber-based products.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. And I think you've been hinting on the classical policy instruments. It's law, it's money, of course, and it is information, as Daniela also has said. So we need also the way that we are heard, and that these instruments are then shaped towards the knowledge that we are representing. Daniela, how is the UFRO experience or the reality check, what works or what does not work with bioeconomy? Because you said evidence-based sometimes is not the most modern thing at the moment. So what is your experience? What are the obstacles that we have to overcome that the concept will fly and convince others?
Yeah, I think in general, I would absolutely agree that norms and standards are, of course, relevant to overcome such of the hurdles. On the other hand, is as well what I see is that we overshoot as well, sometimes as well from science. We have seen this in some scientific publications, so we easily board on the boat of providing simple solutions for political decision makers, saying, oh yeah, let's, sorry John, but let's plant 1 million trees and then we will save the world. This is not possible, so we have to be serious about that. And I think with whatever we do, we need to consider as well the unplanned consequences. So whatever is done and whatever we change and whether we plant trees or not, it's a question, where do we plant it? Who owns the land? Who is then sort of, who might be victimized because of that? I think that is relevant of that as well. So we need to think about that too, so that might be an obstacle. But for me, most of all, and maybe that is sort of very coherent with what the both of you have said as well, is some sort of past dependencies. Because we are locked into some discourses when you said that, well, it's not allowed to do that. So it's easy to change the rules, but you can't just easily change the rules. Because that is something, you have learned that. You have learned that in a generation or two, that maybe wooden buildings are very prone to fires or having some other critical and this is why you don't do that, or because you think that it's more prestigious to have a concrete building than having a wooden building, because we have sort of educated people in doing that this way. So it is a shift of a discourse as well, that wooden building, wood construction might help in the future, but we need to think as well much, much broader. And sometimes we are locked into our little understanding of bioeconomy, how it looks like. And for me, it was an eye-opener when we compared the bioeconomies of Europe and from the African region as well, that there is some different goals in it, where there were much more social issues as well. There were many of those issues and goals were very comparative and very similar, but there were as well some others, and we can learn from each other there, and we should do that. So that would really, really help. So cooperating, communicating with each other, respecting different understandings, and then making use of it. So learning, I think that would be the best.
Thanks very much, Daniela. John.
Yeah, I'm just prompted to respond directly. Of course, thanks for the reality check. The world we are living in, and of course, very with path dependence and all these things. On the other hand, I think the transformation is long overdue now. Actually, when you look at the building codes, and we did a number of conferences on that, give you an example. In Germany, the building codes regarding fire protection, they date back to 1943. Why? Because this was built actually, or this was implemented in order to protect German cities against the bombardments of the Allied bomber fleets, from UK, from USA and so on. And this is still existing, can you imagine? Why? Because there are powerful lobbies who love it actually. Should I mention the name concrete here? Maybe I'm not allowed. Anyway, but you see, we are trapped in a non-sustainable trajectory, and it's not easy to get out of this. But we need to do everything we can, and it will take a long time, but that's why precisely we have to do the first step now, actually.
John, I think we all believe what you're saying, and so I think we are a community that is interested in the bioeconomy and that. But how do we reach those that then decide in the policy system, in the economic system? Is there anything that you can tell us?
So at the end of the day, the decision makers on the policy, on the political side, they want votes. So they want votes, so they want job creations, they want people to feel, that their well-being is important. And so how we address how we're building new systems that are technically credible, economically viable, and socially inclusive that will make them shine will be critical. In terms of decision makers on the finance side and investment side, we need to be speaking their language. So how we translate science into bankability is key. And so this is why how we work collectively together in the ecosystem for innovation, from science to products on the market to investors that enable that and policymakers that enable the conditions, is really key. And so we really need to make sure that how we're communicating our science enables each part of that system to really work as well as possible. And that requires that as scientists, we speak multiple languages.
Okay, that's easy. As scientists, we should be used to speaking multiple languages. No, but I think thanks for the advice. John?
Maybe just to follow up, and of course, when Daniela will have the last word here, but it's absolutely true that decision makers are now craving for solutions which are also creating economic value, social value, of course, very important. And we can propose precisely that. So we will organize in Germany in April in Berlin a major, we call it the Timber Summit. And probably we will even have a contribution by the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz. The keynote will be given by the Minister for Construction, Verena Huberts, so it will be absolutely high level. So it's a wake-up call for the political. And what can we offer? We can offer climate restoration. We can offer value creation in the rural landscapes where politicians are craving for really, not just within the city. And we can also offer in Europe, for example, economic competitiveness. So Europe is still the number one when it comes to construction with bio-based material. Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Scandinavians, and so on. The thing we need to do, that's very important, we have to embrace high-tech as well. You can demonstrate with the best timber construction, even skyscrapers can be done if you use machine learning, for example. So I call it high-tech meets no-tech, and I really mean no-tech. This is the formula for the future.
Thanks very much, John. Daniela, as an expert on the science policy interface, we know that it's important to bring these spheres together, to work alongside, to convey the messages. Are there any thoughts from your side?
Oh yeah, thanks. That allows me a good advertisement here at this moment, because IOFRO has already the science policy interfaces a lot, and we are very happy, and many of our colleagues here from the Collaborative Partnership on Forest are here, so we are working together and we are providing reports. I think for scientists it's most important that we really have credibility, that we really have excellent science results, and that we provide those into the political sphere, and then we have to communicate as well. So we do that at the global level already for many, many, many years, and now for 1 year nearly, we have a new format as well, so that we provide as well science expertise at the regional level in Europe and in Africa as pilots, where we really try to communicate with each other, where we really want to exchange. We want to know, what do you need to know? What is, because sometimes it's not the second or the third number behind the comma which is relevant for scientists, but maybe not for political decision makers. So we really want to know, what do you need? And then we try to provide it in a swift response mechanism. Because the other problem from a political point of view, I fully understand that. Usually what we say when we come from science is to say, yeah, that is a great idea, we will have a look at it, just let me research on it for 2-3 years, and then it's too late. So what we really want to do here is to provide a swift response mechanism, which is very immediately coming up with the news knowledge we have. So give it a try, come to us, and we will, what do you say? We save the world, right?
That was over. Yes, I think we all do that. That's very. But now, before we save the world, maybe we have one last round, and then we'll end this really very interesting round of discussion. You have now this forum, and it will go to UNFF, it will go to FAO. So what is the main message that you would like to convey from your organizational point of view and your background also to this forum? What should be considered in the documents that come out of this forum? Iliana?
Yeah. So one of the key areas, again, it's how do we work at the systems level? So bring all of the different actors we had this morning coming together and engaging together to create a system that really brings the most viability in terms of pathways where we maximize how forest bioeconomies really contribute to that wonderful place where we're restoring that billion hectare of land in ways that are economically viable, socially inclusive, and politically enabled.
Excellent. Thanks very much. John?
I have a very simple plea for you. Stand up and shout loud together.
Okay, so should we try now or later? No, thanks very much.
Okay,
Daniela.
thanks a lot. I think learning from each other, communicating with each other, and this is a very good start at the summit. That's a good starting point.
Thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear panelists, thanks very much for this really nice talk, and thanks for you for listening. I think we've learned a lot from your experience and from your organizations that will directly feed into the outcomes of this conference. I think this was a great opportunity to hear what science knows. And yeah, thank you very much again. And we give back to Tina and leave from this podium here. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter, and the panelists.